Hello and welcome back everyone. So today in this lecture I'm going to be discussing the trigeminal nerve, which is your fifth cranial nerve. So trigeminal nerve is basically a mixed nerve carrying both sensory and motor components. It provides sensory supply mainly to the areas and to the structures of your face, while it provides motor components to few of your muscles, which we'll be discussing later onwards. So in this video I'm going to be discussing the origin of the nerve up until the three main divisions. And in my subsequent video, I'm going to be discussing the innervation of those divisions and the clinical importance of the nerve. So let's start first with the origin of the nerve. So when we talk about the origin of any nerve, whether it is a spinal nerve or a cranial nerve, they all originate from a cluster of neurons which are inside your CNS. And we call these cluster of neurons as nuclei. So nuclei are basically a collection of neurons inside your CNS. They can also be appreciated as the gray matter inside your CNS. Now, as the name suggests, the cranial nerves are those nerves which originate from the nuclei located in your brain, while the spinal nerves are those nerves that originate from the nuclei located in your spinal cord. And since the trigeminal nerve is also a cranial nerve, therefore it originates from the brain, and to be more specific, it originates from the nuclei which are located in your brain stem. So there are four main nuclei from which the trigeminal nerve originates. Three of them are sensory, named as mesencephalic nuclei, principal nuclei, and spinal nuclei, while one is the motor nuclei, which is just known as the motor nuclei. So 3 out of 4 are sensory nuclei and 1 out of 4 is the motor nuclei. All of these 4 nuclei extend from your midbrain to the medulla oblongata. So at the level of pons, your 3 sensory nuclei, which are your mesencephalic nuclei, principal nuclei, and spinal nuclei, merge together and form a single sensory root, while the single motor nuclei give rise to your single motor root. So the 3 sensory nuclei basically give rise to your one sensory root, while your single motor nuclei give rise to your single motor root. So now you have two roots. One is the sensory root formed by the merging of 3 sensory nuclei, while the second is your motor root formed from a single motor nuclei. So after emerging, both of these roots go to the middle cranial fossa. Now in the middle cranial fossa, your sensory root, only your sensory root expands to form a trigeminal ganglion. Now this trigeminal ganglion is located in a depression of the temporal bone, and we call this depression as the temporal cave, or also known as the Meckel's cave. So the temporal bone is also the part of your middle cranial fossa and forms posterior, lateral and some part of the floor of your middle cranial fossa. Now what is a ganglion? So ganglion is basically a collection of cell bodies located outside your CNS. And since this collection of cell bodies is not only located outside the CNS, but it is also associated with the trigeminal nerve, therefore we call it as the trigeminal ganglion. So from this trigeminal ganglion emerge 3 nerves, or 3 main divisions of the trigeminal nerve. And these 3 divisions are named as the ophthalmic nerve, the maxillary nerve, and the mandibular nerve. You can also call them as the ophthalmic division, the maxillary division, or the mandibular division, and you can also name them as V1, V2, V3, simply because the trigeminal nerve is named as V, which is the number 5 in Roman. Therefore, we can also call these 3 divisions as V1, V2, and V3. You have to remember one thing over here is that the ganglion is formed by the expansion of only the sensory root, and therefore it is a sensory ganglion, and hence the 3 divisions which arise from the ganglion have only a sensory component and no motor component yet. So the motor root, which is right now behind your ganglion, now travels inferior to the ganglion and joins the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. So therefore it bypasses the trigeminal ganglion and only joins the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. So here you can see that the V1 and V2, which are your ophthalmic and maxillary branches, are devoid of any motor component and will only carry sensory component, while the V3, which is your mandibular nerve, will carry the sensory as well as the motor component from here onwards. So now we have 3 main divisions of the trigeminal nerve, but in order to provide innervation to the face, these 3 divisions first need to escape the cranium or your cranial vault. And so the 3 nerves travel through certain foramens to escape the cranium. The ophthalmic and maxillary nerve travel lateral to the cavernous sinus. Cavernous sinus is a very important and a very vital structure which I will discuss in some other video. So after passing lateral to the cavernous sinus, the V1, which is your ophthalmic nerve, now finally exits the cranium through superior orbital fissure, while the V2, which is your maxillary nerve, exits the cranium through foramen rotundum. So both V1 and V2 pass lateral to the cavernous sinus, but V1 escapes the cranium through superior orbital fissure, while the V2 escapes the cranium through foramen rotundum. So finally, the last division of the trigeminal nerve, the V3, which is your mandibular nerve, exits the cranium through foramen ovale and enters the infratemporal fossa. So from here onwards, these three divisions, the ophthalmic division, the maxillary division and the mandibular division, will give off further branches to innervate the structures of your face, which I will discuss in my later videos. So this ends my part 1 of the trigeminal nerve over here, from origin up until the three main divisions and how they escape the cranium. In the next parts, I will discuss the innervation of these nerves and also the clinical importance of the trigeminal nerve. So I hope everything is clear in this lecture. If you still have any confusion, you can comment down below and I will try to answer them. So I'll meet you people in my next video, and please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you people next time. Goodbye.